The dog who chose the homeless man, and the reason broke everyone's heart. The shelter was buzzing with excitement that Saturday morning. Families lined up outside, children pressing their faces against the glass windows, eager to meet their future furry companions. Inside, dozens of dogs wagged their tails hopefully, barking and jumping against their kennel doors. But one dog sat perfectly still in the corner, watching everything with ancient, knowing eyes. His name was Max, and he had been at the shelter longer than any other dog. What happened next would change everything anyone thought they knew about loyalty, love, and what truly matters in this world. The dog nobody wanted. Max was a 7-year-old golden retriever mix with a graying muzzle and tired eyes that had seen too much. He had been surrendered to the shelter 6 months ago when his elderly owner passed away. The shelter staff adored him. He was gentle, well-trained, and incredibly sweet. But week after week, family after family passed him by. "They all want puppies," Sarah, the shelter manager, would say with a sigh. "Nobody sees the beauty in an older dog." Max seemed to understand. While the younger dogs performed elaborate shows of cuteness, rolling over, playing fetch, doing tricks, Max simply sat and observed. He had learned long ago that true connection couldn't be forced, it had to be chosen. The shelter workers had almost given up hope of finding Max a home. At 7 years old, with his best years behind him, the statistics weren't in his favor, but they refused to euthanize him. There was something special about Max, something indefinable that made everyone who met him feel he was meant for something more. An unexpected visitor. That particular Saturday started like any other adoption day. The shelter opened its doors at 9 o'clock sharp, and the flood of potential adopters began. Young couples looking for Instagram-worthy puppies, families with children searching for energetic playmates, singles seeking companionship. They came in waves, moving from kennel to kennel, pointing and exclaiming over the cutest dogs. Max watched from his corner kennel, unmoved by the chaos. He had seen this dance too many times before. But around noon, something changed. The automatic doors slid open, and an old man shuffled in. His clothes were threadbare and dirty, held together with patches and hope. His face was weathered like old leather, carved with deep lines that spoke of years spent outdoors. He carried a small backpack that contained everything he owned in the world. His name was Robert, though most people on the street called him Old Rob. If this story has touched your heart, you're not alone. Share it with someone who needs a reminder that love knows no boundaries. Keep reading to discover why this moment changed everything. The atmosphere in the shelter shifted immediately. Some families instinctively pulled their children closer. Others whispered and moved to the opposite side of the room. Sarah, the shelter manager, approached cautiously. "Can I help you, sir?" she asked, her voice professional but guarded. Robert looked down at his worn shoes, clearly uncomfortable with the attention. I just wanted to see the dogs. I don't have money to adopt. I'm sorry, I'll leave." He turned to go, but Sarah's hand gently touched his arm. "Wait," she said, her voice softening. "You don't need to leave. Everyone is welcome to visit the dogs." Robert's eyes lit up with gratitude. "Really?" "Really," Sarah confirmed. "Take all the time you need." The moment that changed everything. Robert walked slowly down the row of kennels, stopping to read each dog's information card. He spoke softly to each one, his weathered hand reaching through the bars to offer gentle pats. The dogs responded to him differently than they did to the other visitors. There was no jumping or barking, just calm acceptance of his presence. When Robert reached Max's kennel, something extraordinary happened. Max, who had remained seated and aloof throughout the entire morning's parade of visitors, suddenly stood up. His tail began to wag, not frantically like the other dogs, but with slow, deliberate sweeps. He walked to the front of his kennel and sat directly in front of Robert, looking up to him with those wise, ancient eyes. Robert crouched down,
wincing slightly at his arthritic knees, and met Max's gaze through the bars. "Hello there, old friend," Robert whispered. Max pressed his nose against the bars, and Robert placed his hand against it. The shelter fell silent. Even the other dogs seemed to sense something sacred was happening. Sarah watched from across the room, her eyes beginning to water. "That's Max," Sarah said, approaching them. "He's been with us for 6 months. He was surrendered when his owner passed away." Robert nodded slowly, not breaking eye contact with Max. "He's beautiful. Would you like to meet him properly? I can take him to one of our visiting rooms." Robert's face fell. "I told you, I don't have money. I live on the streets. I can barely feed myself. What kind of life could I give him?" Sarah smiled through her tears. "I know, but you can visit with him, please." Two souls recognizing each other. In the small visiting room, something magical unfolded. Sarah opened Max's kennel and attached a leash, but Max didn't need leading. He walked directly to Robert as if they had known each other for years. The old man sat on the floor, and Max immediately lay down beside him, resting his gray muzzle on Robert's lap. Robert's weathered hands, marked by years of hardship, gently stroked Max's fur. Tears rolled down his cheeks, creating clean tracks through the grime. "I had a dog once," Robert said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "His name was Buddy. He was a golden retriever, just like you. We were inseparable." He paused, his hand trembling slightly. "I lost everything 12 years ago. My wife died. I lost my job, couldn't pay the mortgage. When I became homeless, I had to give Buddy to a shelter. It was the hardest thing I ever did." Sarah sat silently, listening. "I've never forgiven myself," Robert continued, his eyes ring-rimmed with emotion. "Every day I wonder if he hated me for abandoning him. Every day I wish I could tell him I'm sorry." Max shifted, pressing closer to Robert, as if he understood every word. "I come to shelters sometimes," Robert admitted, "just to see the dogs, to remember what it felt like to have that kind of love, to feel like I mattered to someone." He looked at Sarah with red-rimmed eyes. "Does that make me pathetic?" "No," Sarah said firmly, her own tears flowing freely now. "That makes you human." The decision nobody expected. The visiting hour passed quickly. Robert spent every minute with Max, talking to him about his life on the streets, his regrets, his small victories. Max listened with the patience of a saint, occasionally licking Robert's hand or nuzzling his arm. When it was time to go, Robert stood slowly, his knees protesting. Max stood too, pressing against Robert's leg. "I have to go now, boy," he said, his voice breaking. "But thank you. Thank you for reminding me what love feels like." He handed the leash to Sarah and walked toward the door. But Max had other plans. The dog planted his feet and refused to move. Sarah tried gently pulling the leash, but Max sat down firmly, his eyes locked on Robert's retreating figure. Then he did something he had never done before. He barked. Not an aggressive bark, but a desperate, pleading sound that echoed through the shelter. Robert stopped at the door, his hand on the handle. Max barked again, louder this time. Robert turned around and Max lunged forward with such force that Sarah had to let go of the leash. The dog ran straight to Robert, sitting at his feet and looking up to him with absolute devotion. The entire shelter was watching now. Other families, staff members, even the veterinarian had come out to witness what was happening. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. "He's chosen you," Sarah said softly, walking over to them. "In all my years working here, I've never seen anything like this." Robert shook his head, tears streaming down his face. "I can't take him. I live under a bridge. I can barely feed myself. What kind of life could I give him?" Sarah knelt beside them, her hand on Max's back. "I think Max has already decided what kind of life he wants." The truth behind the choice. What happened next stunned everyone in the shelter. Sarah called an emergency staff meeting. They gathered in her office while Robert and Max waited in the visiting room. The debate was heated. The practical concerns were real. How could a homeless man properly care for a dog? What about veterinary care, food, shelter during harsh weather? But then Emma, one of the newer volunteers, spoke up. She had been researching something on her phone during the discussion. Did you know that homeless people with dogs live longer? Studies show they have better mental health, are more likely to seek medical care, and less likely to engage in risky behaviors. The dog gives them a reason to live, a purpose. That's fine, Tom argued, the assistant manager, but what about the dog's welfare? Emma continued reading from her phone. Research also shows that dogs with homeless owners are often just as healthy and sometimes even better cared for than dogs in homes. Why? Because these owners share everything they have with their animals.
The decision was made to allow Robert to adopt Max, but with support. Sarah posted the story on the shelter's social media page, explaining the situation and asking for community help. She expected maybe a few donations of dog food. What happened instead went viral. Within 24 hours, the post had been shared over 50,000 times. Donations poured in from around the world. A local veterinarian offered free lifetime medical care for Max. A pet supply store pledged to provide food for as long as needed. Someone donated a weatherproof tent designed for camping with dogs. Another person provided warm blankets and a portable heater. Pause here for a moment. This story shows us that miracles happen when communities come together. Share this article right now. You might inspire someone to help a person or animal in need in your own community. Now, see how this story ends. But the most surprising offer came from James, a local businessman who had read the story. He owned several apartment buildings and offered Robert a studio apartment rent-free for 1 year, with the option to extend if Robert found work. "My father was homeless for 3 years," James explained when he called the shelter. "A social worker who refused to give up on him changed his life. This is my chance to pay that forward." When Sarah told Robert about the outpouring of support, the old man broke down completely. "Why?" he kept asking. "Why would anyone care about someone like me?" "Because you matter," Sarah said simply. "Because Max knew what we all needed to remember, that every person, regardless of their circumstances, deserves love and dignity." The transformation. 3 months later, Sarah visited Robert and Max at their new apartment. The transformation was remarkable. The apartment was small but clean and warm. Max had a comfortable bed in the corner, toys scattered around, and bowls filled with fresh food and water. But more impressive was Robert himself. He had gained weight, his clothes were clean, his hair was cut, but the biggest change was in his eyes. They had life in them again. "I got a part-time job," Robert told Sarah proudly. "Just maintenance work at the building. But James says if I do well, it could become full-time. And I've been going to a counselor, free through a program James connected me with." Max lay contentedly on the couch, watching them talk. "I haven't drank in 3 months," Robert continued. "I used to drink to forget, to numb the pain of losing everything. But now," he looked at Max with pure love, "now I have a reason to remember why life is worth living." Sarah smiled, but Robert wasn't finished. "I want to tell you something," he said seriously. "That day at the shelter, I had decided it would be my last day." Sarah's breath caught. "I was planning to say goodbye to the dogs, and then—" He couldn't finish the sentence. "But Max saved me. When he chose me, when he refused to let me leave, he gave me something I thought I'd lost forever, a reason to keep going." The lesson that changed everything. Sarah shared Robert and Max's story in a blog post that would eventually reach millions of people. But beyond the heartwarming narrative, she included research that opened people's eyes to uncomfortable truths about homelessness and the power of human-animal bonds. She wrote about how 25% of homeless individuals are military veterans, how the majority of homeless people have jobs but can't afford housing, how many became homeless due to medical debt, mental illness, or domestic violence, not personal failings. She also wrote about the science behind what she had witnessed between Robert and Max, studies showing that the human oxytocin bond between dogs and humans is similar to that between parents and children. Research demonstrating that dogs can sense depression, PTSD, and other mental health conditions, often providing comfort instinctively. Max chose Robert not despite his homelessness. Max chose Robert because he sensed a kindred spirit, someone who understood loss, grief, and survival. Max had lost his owner. Robert had lost everything. They recognized in each other the same pain, the same need for connection, and in finding each other, they both found healing. The story resonated because it challenged people's assumptions. How many had walked past Robert on the street without seeing his humanity? How many had judged him without knowing his story? And yet a dog, with no prejudice, no judgment, no bias, had seen his true worth immediately. 6 months later, full circle. 6 months after the adoption, the shelter held a special fundraising event. The guest of honor, Robert and Max. Robert stood nervously before a crowd of 200 people, Max sitting calmly at his side. He had prepared a short speech, but found himself deviating from his notes. Most of you see me as someone who was saved. You see Max as the lucky dog who found a home, but you've got it backwards. The crowd grew silent. I didn't save Max. Max saved me. And the real heroes aren't me or my dog. They're people like Sarah and her team who saw past the surface, who believed that love matters more than circumstances, who proved that dignity and compassion aren't privileges reserved for those who can afford them.
Before Max, I was invisible. People looked through me like I was a ghost. I had forgotten what it felt like to matter to anyone. But this dog, this beautiful, wise, incredible dog, he looked at me and saw someone worth loving, someone worth choosing. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. So when people ask me how I saved Max, I tell them the truth. I didn't. He saved me. And in doing so, he taught all of us a lesson we desperately needed to learn. The ripple effect. Robert and Max's story sparked a movement. The local shelter started a program called Second Chances, matching senior dogs with homeless individuals who wanted to care for a pet, providing support and resources. Other cities adopted similar programs. Studies were conducted on the success rates, and the results were astounding. Homeless individuals with dogs were 60% more likely to secure housing within a year, 75% more likely to maintain sobriety or reduce substance abuse, and showed significant improvements in mental health. But the impact went beyond statistics. Businesses began reconsidering their policies about homeless individuals with dogs. More apartment complexes became willing to accept tenants who were transitioning out of homelessness, especially those with well-behaved pets. Communities started viewing homeless individuals not as problems to be solved, but as people who deserved support and dignity. And it all started because one dog chose love over comfort, connection over convenience. Why Max's choice matters. The reason Max's choice broke everyone's heart wasn't just because it was touching, it was because it revealed an uncomfortable truth about humanity. A dog operating on pure instinct and emotional intelligence had immediately recognized the worth in someone that society had deemed worthless. Max didn't care that Robert was homeless, dirty, or unable to provide a lavish lifestyle. He cared about the quality of Robert's heart, the depth of his capacity to love, and the authenticity of his spirit. In that moment,
Max reminded all of us of what we've forgotten in our materially obsessed world, that a person's value isn't determined by their bank account, their address, or their social status. It's determined by their character, their capacity for love, and their fundamental humanity. Dogs don't care about any of the artificial distinctions we humans create to separate ourselves from each other. They don't see race, class, wealth, or status. They see hearts, and Max saw a heart that was good, kind, and worthy of love. This is your moment. Share this story far and wide. Post it on your social media. Send it to friends. Talk about it at dinner. Stories like this don't just warm hearts, they change minds and inspire action. One share could help someone like Robert or a dog like Max in your own community. The ongoing journey. Today, 2 years after that fateful meeting, Robert and Max are thriving. Robert now works full-time in building maintenance and has his own one-bedroom apartment. He's reconnected with a daughter he hadn't spoken to in years, who broke down crying when she met Max and heard the full story. Max, now 9 years old, shows no signs of the depression he experienced at the shelter. He has his own Instagram account, managed by Robert with help from Emma, the volunteer, with over 100,000 followers who tune in daily to see their adventures. Every post includes information about local homeless resources and animal shelters. Robert volunteers at the shelter every Sunday, spending time with the senior dogs and talking to potential adopters about the joys of adopting older animals. He's also started speaking at schools and community centers about homelessness, breaking down stereotypes and humanizing an issue that many people prefer to ignore. Max gave me my voice back, Robert explains. Before him, I felt like I had nothing to contribute, nothing valuable to say. But our story has given me a platform to help others understand that homeless people are just people going through difficult circumstances. We're not less than. We're not disposable. We're human beings who deserve compassion. A call to action. What can you do? Robert and Max's story isn't just meant to make you feel good. It's meant to inspire action. Here's how you can make a difference. Support your local animal shelter. These organizations do incredible work with limited resources. Donate money, time, or supplies, and consider adopting a senior dog. They have so much love to give. Challenge your assumptions about homelessness. The next time you see a homeless person, remember Robert. Remember that you don't know their story, their struggles, or their inherent worth. A smile, a kind word, or a small gesture of dignity can mean everything. Support programs that allow homeless individuals to keep their pets. Many shelters and social services force people to choose between housing and their animals. Organizations that allow people to stay with their pets see much better outcomes. Advocate for affordable housing. The majority of homeless individuals work, but simply cannot afford rent. This is a systemic issue that requires systemic solutions. Share stories like this one. When we humanize issues like homelessness, we break down the barriers that prevent action and compassion. The final lesson. On a cool evening, Sarah visited Robert and Max at their apartment one last time before moving to a new city. As they sat together, watching Max sleep peacefully by his favorite spot by the window, Robert shared one final thought. "You know what the crazy thing is?" he said quietly. "Everyone talks about how Max chose me, but the truth is we chose each other. Max needed someone who understood loss and grief. I needed someone who could see past my circumstances to my heart. We were both broken, and somehow, together, we became whole." He reached down to pet Max, who stirred slightly but didn't wake. "That's what love does," Robert continued. "Real love doesn't demand perfection. It doesn't require wealth or status or having everything together. Real love sees the broken pieces and says, 'That's okay. I'm broken too. Let's heal each other.'" Sarah wiped tears from her eyes. You know you've changed countless lives with your story, right? Robert shook his head. Max changed those lives. I'm just the lucky guy he decided to save. Conclusion: a story that continues. The story of the dog who chose the homeless man doesn't have an ending because it's still being written. Every day, Robert and Max wake up together, grateful for another day of companionship. Every day, someone reads their story and decides to adopt a senior dog, or donate to a homeless shelter, or simply treat the homeless person they pass on the street with a little more dignity. Max's choice, a simple decision made in a shelter on an ordinary Saturday, created ripples that continue to spread. It reminded us that wisdom often comes from the most unexpected sources, that the purest form of love recognizes no boundaries, that sometimes the best judge of character has 4 legs and a wagging tail. In a world that often feels divided, cynical, and harsh, Max and Robert's story is a beacon of hope. It proves that compassion still exists, that second chances are possible, that love can triumph over circumstances, and sometimes the most profound moments come from the simplest choices. The dog chose the homeless man, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. And in that choice, he showed us all what it truly means to love unconditionally. This is your final call to action. Don't let this story end with you. Share it everywhere. Talk about it. Let it inspire you to see people differently, to act with more compassion, to remember that every person you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Be like Max. Look past the surface and recognize the inherent worth in every human being. Together, we can create a world where stories like Robert and Max's become the norm, not the exception. Share this now and be part of the change. If you were moved by this story, please share it on your social media platforms. Tag your local animal shelter, homeless advocacy groups, or friends who need a reminder that love knows no boundaries. And if you're able, consider donating to organizations that support homeless individuals and shelter animals. Every small action creates ripples, just like one dog's choice changed everything.